What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. In the past, I've made a few videos criticizing the gold medals in Overwatch, trash damage versus impact frags, and the gold medal fallacy. But to quickly summarize the points that I have to criticize against them before I try to go on to solve the problem of the stats that we currently have in Overwatch, let me explain what I mean. First and foremost, Blizzard wanted to remove the need of a public scoreboard for all the players to look at how everyone else is doing and what exactly they're doing. They thought that this would cut down on toxicity, as first-person shooter players often try to read the scoreboard, call people out, and are generally not interested in playing as the team to play for the win, but instead are too concerned about like KD and things like that. So their heart's in the right place. But the problem is, what we have instead is the medal system, which instead of the public scoreboard with all of the information available for everyone to see in plain view, instead, now we have to play detective. And players that might have a gold medal in one area try to hold that over somebody else's head. And a lot of times it doesn't even apply at all. That's kind of the problem. Because even the stats that they use to give you medals for are not that useful at actually explaining the game, nor the roles and the nuances of each hero's responsibilities. They look cool, but the problem is that you need so much context to explain what they mean to the game that you're playing, that if you have the perspective to see all that context anyway, you didn't need the gold medals to begin with. So what the medal should do is simplify something for the user to say, I'm doing really good in this area. But the problem is, each one of the stats that we have now is so vague that doesn't actually accurately describe what's going on. For instance, objective kills and objective time, not really important at all because winning team fights gets you the objective for free. It's not really good to try to imply the players should just dive onto the point because that's not how to play the game in most of the game modes, especially in 2CP. Don't just dive the point thinking touching the point more helps. The overall damage number doesn't tell you anything about impact damage, and it also includes damage done to barriers, like Reinhardt's, which is the size of the moon. And limbs aren't that helpful either, because all it means is that you participated even one damage into the kill. That typically goes to players that can either stay alive longer, so that they have presence in multiple fights, which is a good thing for sure, and a good sign. But for instance, if you're playing like Lucio, and you get gold to limbs, you may want to question to make sure that you're not focusing too much on dealing 16 to 45 damage a pop, and be certain that you have your amps and ultimates on point, because those are way more important than you getting on the scoreboard. So, let's talk about some solutions to this. And I don't pretend to have all the answers on this. I think with some creative thought in the comment section, you guys can come up with a bunch of good ideas too, but I want to try to steer us into thinking about making stats that the game could track that could be useful to teach players what is success in the game, as well as reflect what good play is. So this is difficult, actually. It's not cut and dry, and because Overwatch is a new game, I think it's reasonable that Blizzard wouldn't have the perfect stat tracking to start the game off with, and it's something that maybe hopefully they could develop over time. I do have some ideas that I think without question should be implemented, and the first and foremost one would be breaking up the overall damage done medal, because I think that's the most toxic one of all. I've seen players that trickle in constantly and never group up, but get gold damage because they're constantly fighting, irrelevant fights that throw the game, but they're constantly fighting and deal more trash damage than everybody else, and then they get in their minds and think they're carrying. Or they blast Rhine shields more than shooting impact targets. So a few ways to fix this. One, without a doubt, all damage done to barriers should be separated into a different stat over to the corner. We're gonna get rid of that entirely. Only damage that actually hits a character should go into the overall damage dealt category as far as I'm concerned. But even more importantly, instead of simply separating a limbs and overall damage done, I would like to know the damage done to a limbs. Now what that number would do would only count the damage that netted in an elimination. So all the other damage that either goes to barriers or gets healed away, that we can call just poke damage, would go over to the side. That number can more easily show who's doing the heavy lifting in terms of the damage department. But the best thing about this system that I'd like to create is that in games where players are losing, say in those situations where there's like, someone has gold limbs with 5 and you're getting wrecked, and the team's talking about swaps and somebody yells out, but I have gold damage! In that instance, all of the damage that didn't get followed up on would be tossed over to the side, and there might be like 500 damage done to eliminations. total. And what this does is lay out to the players that are looking at it the impact that they're actually having. Because right now what happens is teams will be losing and a DPS player will press tab so he has gold damage with 10,000, not know what that means, assume they're doing a good job, and it starts arguments and it leads to toxicity. But if it was separated in this way, then a player who groups up properly and doesn't just trickle in and deal trash damage and has bigger impact kills, their damage to eliminations would look a lot better compared to the poke damage that is a bit more negligible. Another interesting stat that I think should be up front and center is solo kills. You're able to see these now, actually, but they're hidden behind a bunch of other text and sometimes hard to find. For a fun exercise for yourself, go look in your current competitive season and press the tab and scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says average solo kills. If you've never looked at this stat, I think you'll be shocked, because I kind of was when I saw it too. The truth of the matter is, the amount of kills that you get all on your own are maybe like 1% of the kills in the entire game. Like sometimes the top eliminations will be maybe like 35 to 50, depending on how long the game went and the type of mode you're playing. And judging by my own stats and looking at my friends' stats, it looks like the main damage dealers who deal big burst damage, who are capable of taking out characters by themselves potentially in a duel, might have like 3 average solo kills. And a character is a bit more for follow-up damage, might be closer to 2, like Genji. Maybe all of you are better than me and your stats are way higher than that. I'm sure that possibly is the case. I compared me and Liam's Widowmaker, and both of our average solo kills with her are about 6. Obviously, if you scope up forever and wait for that impact frag on a headshot on a squishy, she's going to have a much easier time with the whole solo kill thing based upon how she plays. The truth of the matter is, the better the game's played, the more focus fire there is, and the less opportunities there even will exist for you to just one-on-one something and fully kill it yourself. I think if that stat was more in the limelight, I think more players would be more in a constant reminder of how much of a team game it actually is. Because now, if we separate all the barrier damage, we only have the damage done to a limbs, some of these players might have a whopping 0 solo kills in these games where they're losing and start to complain at their teammates. Like if you're carrying, you should be able to get a pick off yourself, right? At least one? Because the truth of the matter is, a big early pick in a team fight matters so much more than so many other different types of things that we can track. The opening frag often dictates the entire pace of that incoming team fight, because one team will have a man advantage and the other won't. So that's another thing that I would love to see tracked. I want to see an entry frag differential. I know this is more of a Counter-Strike thing, but it definitely applies to Overwatch. And how would it have to be is that the game would have to realize the down points in between full team fights and sort of put a timer between that next point of contact. And then once that contact comes in, then the new team fight has started. And if you die there without getting a kill, you're going to add an 0-1 to your entry frag differential. Players that trickle in over and over again would rack these up, because really, they should wait for the next team fight before they die. It might be kind of hard to figure out at the levels of play where nobody ever groups up, but at the very least, I think it should be feasible in the pro context and the higher levels where proper grouping happens more regularly. Because, and this is very important, if you're playing, say, a Genji, and even an amazing Genji who's doing tons of work, you have gold damage and gold to limbs, because you run in, you kill a bunch of stuff, and you win your team a few team fights. But sometimes Genjis that play so aggressively die very early in these entry frag battles. And the thing is, although you may make tons of big plays in order to carry the game in other team fights, if you die first as a DPS, you're throwing that fight for the rest of your team. Because the way Overwatch is built is that tanking and healing is utilized to set up damage dealers. Because if damage dealers don't exist, the enemy team can't die, and they'll eventually kill you. So they're kind of the centerpiece of the team. Yes, tanks and healers can deal damage too, but whether we're playing quad tank with Roadhog being the main DPS that needs to be protected, or we go back to the Widow meta, or the Pharah meta, or the Genji meta, each meta shift, it's kind of revolved around setting up a DPS to deal damage to the enemy team. So with that being the case, if that stat was available, a player with that kind of playstyle might be able to learn from their mistakes instead of just look at the good side of things that they do. Another interesting damage stat could be damage per minute, also healing per minute as well. These get tracked on websites that track your Overwatch statistics, and I would like it if the in-game client could figure it out. It's a bit better of a number to use, but to be honest, everything is contextual, like I tried to say before. If you're playing in a balanced team comp, you're going to have less healing than if you were playing in a tank-heavy lineup, where you're going to be healing constantly. Another one I would like is uptime percentage. Obviously, overall deaths can kind of help with this, but uptime percentage would be an average across the time of the match. So say if a match lasts 20 minutes, and you died 6 times, maybe you'd have 19 minutes of uptime, if my math is correct, because every death you get is 10 seconds out of the fight. Now, if they could get really fancy with this, that number could be adjusted to also include your walkback time to the fight. Now, that's probably too advanced, that's me dreaming, but there's some deaths that are far worse than others. And some deaths that are almost required, like if you're trying to just throw whatever you can to contest the point, taking a big risk, and that's the decision your team's doing, dying there's okay. But there's certain spots where dying sends you to the back of the map, and you won't be back into the fight for another 15 or 20 seconds because the run back time's so far. Maybe perhaps it could track the amount of time that you're doing actions, maybe. Now, granted, that would hurt some characters that play a more wait and pounce play style, like Winston on defense, whenever he is played, or Reaper, who wants to hide in corners a lot of the time and then pounce at an opportunity. But that's why we have all these other stats too to kind of figure these things out. I think even if that was the case, and heroes that have that play style would have worse numbers in that regard, it would still make sense for a lot of the other heroes, like say Ana, for instance, who has massive range on her healing and doesn't really have an excuse to not be healing something in the midst of a fight. Now, to deal with the objectives, I would like to see some stats that were more specific to objective plays. So instead of just objective kills overall, which are more incidental than impact really, I'd like to see objective saves. So in those moments where your team's down and the enemy team's contesting and you have to win a battle to overtake that point in a fight, I'd like to see it tracked where a specific kill that you got saved the objective from being taken. Also, I wish there was a way that we could find stats out for the lifesaver plays that exist in Overwatch. There definitely is some interior functionality with this, because there is, of course, the lifesaver play of the game, which if you protect somebody from getting killed to an insta-kill, like a Rhine charge or something, you can get a lifesaver play of the game. I know this is manipulated in the on fire system a bit as well, because I've got a play of the game where, like, I killed a few things, and then a Rhine charged my friendly, and I killed them as well before they were able to land the pin. I think the same should go for if you Zarya bubble a teammate who gets pinned or hooked, or if you kill that target before they are able to finish off their insta-kill. Same thing with like ultimate shutdowns. It's not really good enough to know the number of sleep darts you land even on average, but the ones that land that sleep a channeling ultimate is huge. Same thing with Lucio boops. Boop kills are awesome, but even better when they're on key targets that are ulted. Other things like ultimate damage blocked by Mei walls. If a D.Va ult comes in and a Mei wall goes up to block it, that should be counted. Honestly, I could go on and on with a bunch of minutia examples. And I hope you guys list a bunch of your ideas in the comment section as well. I think the issue that we have now is that we don't have the public scoreboard. We have something that I'm not sure is even just as bad in the medal system that just leads to a bunch of finger pointing over stats that aren't that impactful to the game anyway. And I'd like to see these reorganized and developed a bit so that the community has a more intuitive way to understand their impact and their friendlies' impact on the game. This will help them make better informed decisions and there'll be less confusion about this. We can't eliminate toxicity forever. I know, it's not possible. Toxic players will always complain about something, but it's just kind of a shame that so many players look to their gold medals and think it justifies anything, when in reality they're incredibly moot to the point. If you're getting wrecked and a job isn't getting done to win a team fight, it doesn't really matter your metrics in that team fight that you're losing. The team obviously needs to change something, and maybe you are doing the best out of your team, I don't know, but that can get reflected in better ways than just overall damage done and how many limbs you were involved with. If you guys enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, it really does help us out. Subscribe for more, we upload each and every day. Also check out our Twitch page and Twitter, all linked in the description. In there is the Discord server as well, where you can find teammates to pair up with on every server, platform, and skill rating. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.